What's up, guys? 1-0 yesterday. Chicago Cubs got there. All right, move on to today. All right, we have no NHL or NBA today as both teams down 3-0, won in blowouts to extend the series. We'll only be talking about baseball today. That means that's all we got going on baseball. I actually have 3 plays right now in baseball. Getting right to it. Cleveland Indians at the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to take Cleveland in this one. We got Toronto down from minus 136 to minus 127. So the line creeping down on Toronto here. So we see line movement against them. Cleveland is public because they are an underdog and the team that has the better record. So that does kind of make sense. They got 72% of the tickets, but 89% of the cash. So I think we do see legitimate money moving this line towards the Cleveland side. And I agree with it. I think maybe it's a little bit misleading as far as the starting pitching matchup, as far as Toronto having Barrios pitching, and he's the more like known quantity. Everybody knows he's kind of a staple of this Toronto rotation. He's good. He's having a good season with a 2.93 ERA and 1.10 whip. So it does feel a little bit weird fading a guy who's doing pretty well. He's not really a strikeout guy. So he only has 64 strikeouts in 86 innings this year, but he's kept the hits way down to 73 and 22 walks. Not that bad either. But in the months of April and so far in June, his walk numbers have been pretty bad, have been up. His walk numbers were good in the month of May only, really. And he did face a couple of good offenses during May. But he's struggled a little bit in his last couple of starts. He had a 6.4 strikeout walk ratio and 11 2/3 in those games. Gave up 3 runs in a 5 2/3 inning performance against Milwaukee. So, yeah, I mean, he still did limit the damage. So that does worry me a little bit that he's limited the damage for the most part. Other than allowing 8 runs against Philadelphia, he hasn't allowed more than 3 in any start. So that is true. So we are kind of bucking that. But he hasn't faced Cleveland yet this year, although that might be a disadvantage to Cleveland as well because they haven't seen him recently. But if you look at his stats against Cleveland, they are not good, man. Even though only 4 Cleveland hitters have seen him before, they have completely wrecked Barrios. They're 12 for 28 off him lifetime, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 4-3 strikeout walk ratio for a 429 batting average and 1,214 OPS. So that's Cleveland's current lineup. Just the 4 hitters who have seen Barrios before have absolutely wrecked him. So I do like that aspect of this play. And then on the other side, Ben Lively, who he's been a guy that I don't really trust because it's like you look at his career stats and it's like, what gives you the idea that at the age of 32, he's just going to all of a sudden be good? Although Cleveland, I mean, he's in a different environment with different coaches or whatever. Maybe they figured something out with him, but he's actually been better than Barrios this year. And I think Barrios has more of that like name recognition on his side, although, as I said, we do see the public on Cleveland because they do have the better record. And if you look, Lively actually has the better ERA at 2.59 and 1.11 whip. He's having a good season, man. And I did not expect this. If you look at his career stats, he was basically a full-time starter for only half a season in Philadelphia in 2017 when he first came up. His stats were not horrible for a first season in the majors, really. Whip 1.29, not great, but not awful. Then I think you can kind of throw his stats out from 2018 through 2019 because he only made 5 starts, didn't start at all with Kansas City. They had him coming out of the bullpen, very small sample size, not a lot to look at. But then last year with Cincinnati, he struggled pretty badly with a 5.38 ERA. He had 12 starts and 7 relief appearances, 1.36 whip. His strikeout numbers had gone up a bit, though, from his first season, and his walk numbers basically stayed about the same, which weren't that bad. But he was giving up a lot of runs and a lot of base runners, and maybe that has to do with the environment. It's not a good pitching environment, pitching in Cincinnati. I don't know, but he has pitched a lot better since he's been on this Cleveland team, man. I don't know what it is exactly, like I said, but he's putting together a good season. I'm not positive that we're going to see that change, really. He doesn't quite go as deep into games as Barrios does. You've seen he reached 7 innings once against a weak Anaheim lineup. He mostly goes like 5 2/3 in a lot of these games, but similar to Barrios, he also has not allowed more than 3 earned runs in any start. So he's been kind of sneaky there, and he's got 48 strikeouts and 55 and 2/3. So Lively somehow actually has the better strikeout rate, and he has 15 walks allowed. So he's actually walked. I think he has a lower walk rate than Barrios does as well. He's only allowed 47 hits. I don't like this fly ball rate out of Lively. 101 fly balls, 56 ground balls. That's dangerous. You're letting a lot of guys put it in the air, so we may see some regression out of Lively. But in this spot, I think I like it. Toronto doesn't have that much history versus him, so they haven't really seen him much. And they only have one guy with a hit off him. Kevin Kiermaier is the only hit off him. They're 1 for 4 off him lifetime. Turner 0 for 3, and nobody else has faced him. 250 opponent batting average and 500 OPS. Very small sample size. But then you get that unfamiliarity aspect coming in where Cleveland at least has like half of their lineup have just torched Barrios, whereas Lively, most of Toronto's lineup has not even faced him before. So I like all that. And then the reason why I think this is a full game play here is because if you look at yesterday's game, Toronto, they shut out Cleveland. It was a bounce back spot for Toronto after they lost the first game of the series to Cleveland. Nice shutout performance, but maybe kind of ugly from the Cleveland perspective. And maybe Cleveland's going to be able to bounce back here. And Cleveland saved their bullpen, man. I mean, Carrasco had a pretty bad start for them yesterday, but then they only used 2 relief pitchers after that, and it wasn't their better relievers, really. They had a Vila come in at the end and just kind of chew up the last couple innings, whereas the Blue Jays kind of went with one of those openers with Richards. I don't even know who the hell he is. He went 2 1/3, and then they dipped into the bullpen early, and they used 5 relief pitchers. And I know I saw some stat, I heard some people talking about this, that the day after a team goes with like the opener approach, they actually tend to do better because they save their bullpen as well. But do they really? Did Toronto really? They used Francis with basically the starter's workload with 4 innings. Okay, fine. But they still used more of their pen than Cleveland did besides that. They used 4 relievers aside from him to Cleveland's 2. Although they only used Pop for 2 innings, so they might use him again, but he's got like a 5-something ERA. So do they even want to use him? I don't know. But so the Blue Jays did use more of their bullpen. So I think the bullpen, and their bullpen has not been good this year either. So I think the bullpen aspect of it also is not an advantage to Toronto's side either. And the way we can play this is just straight up. You can just grab Cleveland money line at plus 110 right now. I think there's value in it, getting them as the dog in this case here. It looks like the market is moving in that direction. I like it. So that's what I'm going to do on that one. And Toronto does have a divisional series against the Red Sox coming up next. So does that make this a little bit of a sandwich? I don't know. When you're facing the best team in the AL Central in the Indians, I don't know. But still, they could have a look ahead to the Red Sox. Even though the Red Sox aren't that great this year, that's still a big divisional series coming up starting tomorrow against the Red Sox. And and Toronto just did beat Cleveland yesterday. So that's play 1. Play number 2 is going to be on a full game total in Oakland, Minnesota. I'm going back to the well on this one and playing an under in this one. This is a series. Oakland and Minnesota didn't play yesterday. It was probably a rain postponement. And they're playing a doubleheader now today. So we're talking about game 1 in the doubleheader, not game 2. Game 2, actually, between Estes and Paddock, the night game, both of those guys in limited playing time have bad stats against these opposing hitters. So I'm not playing the under in that game. I'm playing the under in the first game, where I think you might have a little bit of an edge because of that rain out yesterday, which means the bullpens both get like some extra rest there, because both bullpens didn't have to play yesterday, didn't have to get used. So the bullpens should kind of be almost fully available for both teams in the first game. So that's good for an under. And obviously, you got to look at the starting pitching matchup. I think the starting pitching matchup is pretty good for it as well. And maybe even with the rain postponement, you could see that might affect the hitting a little bit too, which I don't think these offenses are that great anyway. Of course, Oakland certainly isn't. But the their hitters' timing might be affected a little bit, having that unplanned day off. So that could come into play as well. I forget what else I was going to say. Oh, and because it's a doubleheader now, you might actually see like some hitters that would normally be in like a lineup if they were playing a 1 a single game on a day, you could see some hitters potentially being left out of starting lineups too. So I don't know if that's going to be the case here, but that sometimes happens in a doubleheader where teams will sit like a couple of their hitters potentially so that they play one of the two games. So we might see that happening in this doubleheader as well. So I like the under for a lot of reasons. But then, of course, the starting pitching matchup is where you get a lot of the play here. J.P. Sears and Bailey Ober. I actually think that their high ERAs are actually kind of misleading here. J.P. Sears, 4.02 ERA, 1.15 whip. That whip is actually pretty good. He's been putting together a good season, man. He had a bad outing against Cleveland to open the season. You can kind of throw out those season openers, though. They don't mean that much. Give up 5 runs there, and he gave up 7 runs against a pretty powerful Baltimore lineup. Other than that, he's been pretty good. He was kind of alternating good and bad starts for a while. Allowed 4 runs in a few, he was allowing 4, then 1, then 4, then 0, then 4. He was just alternating like good and bad starts for a while, but he's been decent throughout the season, man. I expected some regression out of him because I'm not sure that he's really that good, although it's kind of hilarious if he is good because the Yankees traded him away. And of course, as a Red Sox fan, I just kind of like that being the case. But Sears, yeah, I mean, he's put together a decent season here, man. Although, like I said, he's starting to see a little bit of regression. He's not a strikeout guy with 54 strikeouts and 78 in the third innings pitched. Does have a bad fly ball ratio, as I mentioned, with Lively as well. 146 fly balls to 92 ground balls, so that's not good either. But he is keeping the guys off the base paths and keeping the hits down. 66 hits and 78 in the third. So again, is that going to regress a little bit? I don't know. And he has 24 walks. That's not awful, but the 54 strikeouts is just not a very high strikeout rate. But that's just not his thing, man. He fools hitters, getting them to kind of hit the ball without like full contact, basically, allowing only 66 hits there and 78 in a third. And against the Minnesota Twins, we have an okay sample size to work with here. Most of their hitters have seen him before, and they haven't done well against them. They're 4 for 26 off him with 1 extra base hit, which is a solo home run from Christian Vasquez. I think, former Red Sox player Christian Vasquez? Is that where he is now? No, my guy. And 6 strikeouts and no walks. 154 opponent batting average for Sears against Minnesota lifetime and a 423 OPS. So Minnesota's offense, aside from Vasquez, who's 2 for 2 off him, Minnesota's offense only is 2 for 24 off him besides him. They've struggled against Sears, man. And I believe they've not faced him yet this year. So there's that unfamiliarity aspect, maybe sort of, just because they haven't faced him recently. But even when they faced him before, they struggled against him. Then on the other side, you got Bailey Ober, man. He's a guy I keep talking about because I like all of his stats except his ERA, basically. And sometimes I get caught by playing Ober. But looking at his career stats, man, I think he's good. And I don't really see his ERA staying as high as it is here, 5.13. So again, I think you have kind of a misleading ERA here. He's got a 1.19 whip, which is getting a little bit worse, but I don't think it's that bad. He's struggled in a few starts in a row. I think he's going to have a bounce back type of start here, man. He didn't even go 5 innings in his most recent start against Pittsburgh. He's had a tough stretch, man. He had faced the Yankees before that, and we know how good the Yankees lineup is. The Royals have been hitting pretty well, and they did well against him before that. Texas and Cleveland and Toronto before that. So he's faced kind of a rough stretch of a bunch of good offenses. So I don't know if you can totally blame him for having a bit of regression here, but looking at the rest of his stats, they're still pretty good, man. That whip isn't that bad. 66 and 2/3 innings pitched. He's allowed 61 hits. That's not bad. 18 walks, also not bad, and 65 strikeouts. So strikeout walk ratio is pretty good. That kind of tells you that he still has command of his pitches, although in those 2 starts in June so far, he hasn't looked good with 7 strikeouts and 6 walks and 9 2/3. But again, it was against the Yankees, which I don't think you can blame anybody for not having a great start against the Yankees. And then maybe it was kind of a hangover effect into that game against Pittsburgh. I don't know. Both of those are on the road. But now he's coming back home, man, to a home environment. I like it. And then Ober against this, he's facing a weak offense here in Oakland. We have a small sample size here. I'd say the majority of Oakland's lineup, I think, has seen him at this point, and they're 1 for 13 off him lifetime. A small sample size, but still, that's not good. 1 double off him, 1 RBI, 4.0 strikeout walk ratio. It's an 0.77 batting average and 231 OPS. So again, very low, very small sample size, but both of these offenses have struggled against these starting pitchers. So I like all this. I like it for an under, even though the market doesn't quite look like it's in agreement here. The market looks like it's gone from 8.5 juice to the under to 8.5 juice to the over. I don't know if this is going to hit 9, but I think you probably don't need to get on this one right away with the look that the market has right now. And 91% of the tickets on the over and 99% of the cash on the over. I don't think that could actually be accurate, but if this hits 9, I mean, that would be even nicer for an under, obviously. But if it doesn't, then we can go under 8.5 here. And for all those reasons, I like the under there. I will mention I also like the under in Yankees Red Sox in the night game, because that's going to be a game where the public is going to come in and want to play an over. And I think both games in that series so far have been fairly high scoring. People know Fenway Park is kind of a hitter's park. Both of those offenses are good. So that does make the under a little bit dangerous, but the starting pitching matchup I think is good for that. With Marcus Stroman against Cutter Crawford, they actually both have good stats against these opposing lineups. And it might be a game where those pitchers both show up because it's like ESPN highlight game, night game. You're going to want to come in and have a good performance against your major rival there. So I do like the under in that one. 54% of the tickets are on the over in that one, but 61% of the cash on the under, dropping it from 9 juice to the over to 9 juice to the under in that one. So I'm not playing that one, but I'll mention that's a lean that I have to the under in Yankees Red Sox. And then to finish this off, my final play. We're getting through this fairly quickly for 3 plays. Hey, I'm being efficient for once. Let's get this last one done. This is going to be on a bigger underdog. I like the matchup here. This is the Chicago White Sox. I'm going to make a play on them, and I think I'm going to split this one because they're a big underdog. You can split the plus 1.5 run line minus 130 and the plus 160 money line and split them half and half and kind of make it a +1 type of run line play and pay a little bit less for it than you would on just the plus 1.5. Or I don't mind really playing the plus 1.5 minus 130 either if you really want to, and sprinkling on the money line maybe, or even a straight up money line at plus 160. I don't mind playing the White Sox in any of those capacities, but I'm just going to do the split bet on this one. I think half and half. Looking at this market here for the White Sox, what do we got here? This is White Sox Arizona. Going interleague here, Arizona's gone up in the market, though, from minus 153 to minus 175. And I just don't get it, man. 75% of the tickets on them, 84% of the cash on them. So they are public, but the lines moved up on them, and they have the cash discrepancy, and I just can't agree with it, man. I don't understand the movement here. I don't see it. I don't know if it's going to come back the other way or what's going to happen here, but I think the line's getting a little bit out of control. The White Sox did win yesterday. So does that mean Arizona's going to be angry and have a bounce back here? Because Arizona is, of course, the better team. I mean, the White Sox are just terrible. I'm not so sure about that. The White Sox used less of their bullpen, kind of. Well, they used 3 relief pitchers yesterday, but they kind of used a couple of their better relievers, sort of. But their bullpen's not really that good. With Fetty making the start, and he's one of their actually decent starters. He did well for the White Sox yesterday. Went 6 innings, and then McGuff kind of did one of those opener things for Arizona yesterday where they had him just open and go 2 1/3, and then they kind of saved their bullpen. So again, that worries me a little bit because I'm going against 2 teams that did the opener approach yesterday. And they used Vieira and then Henry, who I think was in their starting rotation for a bit, and used them to kind of just save the rest of their bullpen. Yeah, that's true, but I don't think either team's bullpen is really shot coming into this game, really, I wouldn't say. And of course, Arizona's going to be without like those long relief men if they really need to get to them. I also don't mind playing this first 5 inning, really, because a lot of this is the starting pitching matchup in this one. But because if you want to do it, playing a plus 1.5 run line, I think the full game does actually make more sense here. But because the starting pitching matchup is the big factor here, I think you could go first 5 inning on this too. I'm actually reconsidering because I haven't actually played this yet. You can get the White Sox plus 138 first 5 inning, and on the plus half run line, you can actually get it at minus 102. So I actually don't mind that. Do we want to do it that way? I'm considering it. Maybe we want to make it a first 5 inning play instead. play the White Sox plus half a run in the first 5 innings. Yeah, let's think about it. We might do that instead and then sprinkle a little bit on the money line. Maybe we'll do that because the starting pitching matchup is really what you want to look at here. And you got Drew Thorpe pitching for the White Sox, man. And he's the guy. People don't really know who he is. So I think maybe we're getting a little bit of value here, even though he does have one start under his belt so far. He made his major league debut, has a 1.8 ERA and 1 whip after that. He went 5 innings against Seattle, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts through 98 pitches. So that's good to see. They kind of unleashed him. They did not have him on a leash in that one. That's pretty decent for a major league debut, I got to say. And it was on the road. So that's good. I think I had the under in that game, if I remember correctly. Did it hit? I don't remember. I think it actually did. Yeah, I think it did. It was a 4-3 final. So Drew Thorpe, I mean, he's a guy, he was a key component, getting traded around a bit. I think he was in the Yankees organization. They traded him to the Padres for Juan Soto, I believe. And then the Padres wound up trading him for Dylan Cease, because they wanted a proven pitcher basically like right away. And that's kind of worked out for the Padres, really. He's been pretty good, but if the Padres don't win right now, maybe it won't wind up working out. So Thorpe has been traded around, and he finally made his major league debut, but he's considered one of the higher up prospects in the White Sox organization. And he might stick in this rotation because Chicago's rotation is so bad. But if you get a Chicago rotation with Crochet, Fetty, and Thorpe, that's not even a bad rotation, really, man. And then it comes down to Chicago's offense being horrible. But maybe the pitching will be decent enough that people will stop shitting on the White Sox so much. But Drew Thorpe, man, he's a guy that has, I think, like a 4-pitch arsenal. He's got a decent fastball, a couple of breaking balls, I think, but his changeup is like basically his game changer. He's got like this elite changeup that he can throw like much lower velocity than his fastball. So it's a weird change of pace. And I guess the coming out, the arm angle, he makes it look exactly the same as the fastball, but then it comes out and it's just a completely different pitch and it's got movement on it. It's like high 70s to low 80s instead of like where his fastball is, which I think is like mid 90s. That pitch is that's his like game breaking pitch, basically, I would say. And his numbers in the minors were pretty good. Like he had a good strikeout rate, a good like low walk rate. Everything was pretty good with him as far as those numbers in the minors. So I think he is good enough, man. He does have the potential to be a decent major league starter. So I like all that. And of course, he's facing an Arizona lineup who's never seen him before. So I think he's going to have the advantage early on against these hitters who have never seen him before. And they're going to have to deal with that changeup of his, having not seen it before in a live game environment. Thorpe could have the advantage there. And then on the other side, Jordan Montgomery is pitching. And he is, of course, the more veteran pitcher. He's 31. And he's put together some pretty good seasons over his career. But this season is certainly not one of them, as he has regressed in a major way, which is strange to see, really, because his seasons for the last like several seasons, he was good. And now it looks like he's kind of like falling back all the way to like he's having his worst season ever. And it's kind of ridiculous to see a 6.58 ERA, 1.67 whip. He's got 52 innings and only struck out 32 this season with 19 walks. That's just, those stats are just awful, man. His strikeout rate is low. He was never really that much of a strikeout pitcher, but his strikeout rate has dropped from what it has been in the past in his career. His walk rate has gone up this year. He's been pretty bad, man. I mean, I don't know what else you could say about that. And he's faced some pretty weak offenses this season as well. And he's kind of struggled, man. I don't know what else to say about that. And then against these White Sox hitters, their hitters aren't very good, but we have an okay sample size to look at here. And they're 12 for 39 off in lifetime with 6 doubles, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, a 12-3 strikeout walk ratio, but it's still a 308 batting average and a 39 at-bat sample size. So that's not exactly a small sample size, really. It's an okay sample size to take something away from it. A 308 average and 973 OPS. So Montgomery, he is struggling this season, man. He seems like the wheels have come off this guy. And you might say, well, the cure could be facing this weak White Sox lineup. But then you look at his stats against the White Sox. They're not good historically. And then you got, I don't think I have to belabor this anymore. What I said about Drew Thorpe on the other side, I think that the matchup calls for a play on the White Sox here in this one. So those are the plays today, man. The Cleveland Indians plus 110. I think we'll make that one a full game because I think the bullpen scenario is actually an edge for Cleveland, even though Toronto did go with the opener approach yesterday. They still used too much of their bullpen in comparison. Under 8.5, Oakland, Minnesota in game one of the doubleheader, the Sears-Ober game, not the other game. And Chicago White Sox will make this first 5 inning plus half a run and sprinkle a little bit on the money line. Let's get it done today, man. Come on, let's start turning this thing around. We're still slightly in the red right now. Just kind of been treading water. Kind of sick of it. Baseball has historically been good for me, so come on, man. Let's get back to it. Peace.